You're listening to The Drew Yari Show.
That's the wine and diner with kings and queens.
You're looking at the man. You're listening to The Drew Yari Show.
What's going on, guys? Thursday. It's the first show of the year. Not just the year, the decade. So, new decade of Yari. Welcome back to the show. I was off last week. That's the thing I do now, where first show of the year, I take the week off. But I'm not alone tonight, guys. Sorry, I have a cold. I'm battling it. So you're going to have to deal with that. My guest host tonight, making his debut on the show. He has two podcasts, actually. He has the B Show, which you can listen to pretty much anywhere where podcasts are put out. And then let me see if I just wrote it down, the Horror Reanimated podcast, which you can actually find on Spreaker, I believe.
Actually, both of them you can, and Horror Reanimated may be going bye-bye in the car, to be honest with you, but we'll see.
But, yeah, he confirmed it. You can find it anywhere. Mr. Brian J. How you doing, Brian?
Hey man, what's up? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, man. Happy 2020. Yeah, me
Barbara Walters.
Yeah, me and Brian have something in common, or one of the main things we have in common is we're both sick. We're both sick as dogs right now.
I was sick as a dog. I'm getting over it, but I'm having like sympathy pains for you right now because it was bad. And it sounds like you're like just heading into it.
Yeah, like because at first it was those coughs that would just give me a headache. And I've graduated from that to chest pains.
Oh, yeah, that's how it was for me, man. Like, do you ever do that social thing where, like, you feel like you're getting sick and then you hear someone else cough and you just cough and you don't know if you're just head tripping yourself or if you're really getting sick?
Yeah, that's probably it.
I seriously almost did that a minute ago when I heard you coughing.
Yeah, it's kind of like when people yawn. When you see someone yawn, you start yawning, too.
Sure. Thanks for having me on, though, man.
What was that?
I have to say that at the top.
I think you're cutting out, man.
Am I? Well, like I'm plugging my landline.
Yeah, Discord can be kind of trippy.
And how am I now?
Sound better.
Awesome. Still overweight, but I sound better. But no, I said thank you for having me on, man. I forgot to say that at the top when we got started.
Well, technically, you invited yourself. I'm playing, but yeah, it's good to have you on, man. Cool. I've been meaning to have you on the show for a while, actually.
Thank you.
So, I guess what can we get into? We can get into the ratings. The ratings for AEW and NXT came out for this week. AEW winning 947,000 viewers.
I'll be honest, I was super surprised at that.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I haven't watched AEW since November. It's just not for me. I tried giving it a chance. I tried being a fan, but I don't see it. I mean, I don't judge anyone that likes it. If you think AEW is your thing, good. It's just not for me. I tried giving it somewhat of a chance last night. And then I just saw the card. I saw Christopher Daniels versus Sammy Guevara, and I just went, nah, not for me.
That stuff is so painful to say because I used to go to Ring of Honor shows every once in a while back in the mid-2000s. One of the few pieces of merchandise I have is on my wall in my office. I'm looking right at it. It's an autographed Fallen Angel 8x10. And that dude, he was just that perpetual guy that you hoped would always get signed, and now he's working for a company with a big budget, and it's like, you know, you're kind of over it by now. It's kind of sad.
Yeah, didn't he at one point work with the WWE, or when it was called WWF?
He might have been attached to the light heavyweight division back in like 97, 96, 97, but I don't think he ever was a major part on the main roster.
I don't know. Well, yeah, I know that, but like I don't know. I could have sworn I saw him. Maybe he was. I don't know. But NXT, what were their ratings? 721,000, which All right, I'll be honest. I did watch NXT. I only watched the first match. The rest of the card did not look that appealing to me. There was a plethora of tag team matches. And then I saw the Forgotten Sons, and I just let me just kind of go off topic. The Forgotten Sons, anytime they're on TV, I try to fast forward. Not just, and by try I mean do. I don't understand the gimmick. I'm not a fan of the gimmick. It's basically a ripoff of Aces and Eights, which, if you're going to rip off a gimmick, rip off a successful gimmick. I don't understand it. But the rest of the card I did not watch. I mean, I heard the show was okay, but too many tag team matches, bro.
It wasn't bad. I mean, I think we're at this point with both shows where there's some really good stuff on the card, and then it's almost 50-50. Like, there's some really good stuff that you really want to watch. Like the opening women's match, I know they've had a ton of tag matches on both shows, but the opening 6-woman tag match, I think it was on NXT, was really, really good. Mm-hmm. As opposed to the Riho versus Chris Statlander matchup.
I don't know.
The AEW. Yeah, the AEW one, you had Rio versus Chris Statlander. I know we're jumping around. I'm sorry. I'm a little ADD, but...
Hey, you're among friends. Go ahead.
All right, cool. Speaking of friends, man, we got Antox in the chat. We got... I noticed Kev Castle. What's up, Kev Castle? And Stone Mexican guy, too. Those are a couple names. Andrew Carlick, a couple names that I recognize. Shout out to everybody.
Actually had Andrew Carlick on the show not too long ago. It's funny fact... Or it's kind of a tragic fact. He and me did probably one of the best shows I've done, and nobody will overhear it because I forgot to change the audio settings on here.
Oh my God, I did that too. One of my first interviews I did with a local indie guy that ended up becoming a good friend of mine. We did I think it was like an hour and a half. We'd never talked to each other. We just really hit it off and had a great conversation. And I forgot to hit the record button.
Well, no, I hit the record button. I just forgot to change the audio settings, to I think it was microphone and then cable for like Skype or Discord or whatever. And me and Andrew just talked for 2 hours. It was pretty fun. And then when I was editing the show, all I can hear is me. And I'm just thinking, you tell me I didn't change the audio settings. And I was actually almost in tears because that's how upset I was. So
I mean, you put that time and effort into something, and then you just don't have it, and it's because you fucked up. It's kind of frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, luckily Andrew was nice enough to come back and talk for another hour. But I mean, it's just we did 2 hours of gold, and nobody will overhear it. And I mean, it's heartbreaking when I think about it. It just still upsets me, and it still breaks my heart when I think about it. But I mean, like I said, Andrew was nice enough to come back for another hour. And that actually, I think when I first started the show, that happened to me again, or that happened to me for the first time, with a friend of mine, where we were recording for 2 hours. We had good conversation, and then all of a sudden, I just listened to the show. All I can hear is me, and then we had to try it again the next day when I knew how to mess with the I guess the audio settings, whatever you want to call it. But I mean, as a podcaster, you kind of pride yourself on having the best show possible. And when stuff like that happens, it just breaks your heart. It pisses you off, and then it breaks your heart.
Agree, man. And I didn't mean to derail you talking about the ratings. No. I don't know, man. Both shows, I think AEW had more expectation, obviously, because of the hype surrounding it. I think they're getting their stuff together. They seem to, and I know some people have mentioned that there's been some struggle behind the scenes to find a cohesive direction. And it looks like they're trying, but it's almost too cohesive. This week they had 3 different angles involving stables trying to recruit someone, and the person kind of fighting back or denying. It's almost like, okay, we went from hodgepodge and now everything's the same. So you got to find the in-between somewhere. The show wasn't terrible. It just, I don't know.
Well, I mean, I feel bad. I mean, I kind of feel bad for not at least trying to give it a chance again. It's just I had a conversation with a friend of mine that I had on here, Ruben Prime, where there's just so much wrestling on TV now. And as a fan, it's a good thing, but it's also not a good thing. Because you can sneeze and there'll be like 5 other wrestling promotions out there. And, you know, you try to pay attention to everything all at once, but it just like, what's the word? It just kind of burns you out a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. As a podcast host, did you feel at all when you first started talking about wrestling that you had to? Did you feel in any way like you had to try to keep your eye on everything or be, you know, up on everything that's going on? Like Jason Solomon, I don't know how he does it. That guy must get no sleep.
And Don Tony.
And Don Tony too. That's right.
Yeah, like I was telling Kevin when I had him on the show, Don Tony's a better man than me. And not just because as far as like, you know, podcasting goes, but, you know, he used to do that show on the Patreon, you know, the This Week in Wrestling History. Like, that guy had to literally find clips, articles of, like, you know, something that happened on May 15th. And then something that happened the year after that. And then the year after that. It's like, Jesus. Like, that guy is just... Like, he's a genius. Say what you want about him, he's a genius. I respect the hell out of him. Same thing with Jason Solomon. Jason Solomon is just... He's the man. There's really no way to say it. When I first started, I tried the best I could to catch up on everything as much as I could. And now with the job I have, where I work Mondays and, you know, Fridays at nights, I'm not able to catch the show. So, and then the show I do now is after Wednesdays, so it gives me a chance to see what's going on in the Wednesday shows, and then, you know, and then NWA. And I haven't really been keeping up with NWA, which again I feel bad for that because I was putting that shit over like crazy, and then I just kind of stopped watching it. Where the only show I really cover now is NXT, and then I'll cover like entertainment, like movies, TV shows and whatnot. So it's hard. Like, you want to try and cover everything all at once. And I mean, it sounds like I'm making excuses, but it's not easy. You do the best you can.
You can't wrap your arms around everything all at once, or you're right, you're going to burn out. And I did that. And again, I maybe 20. I didn't have very much, you know, in the way of a podcast audience anyway, but you're still putting time into it. You're still putting energy into it. You're trying to pay attention, and if you're like me, and I know a lot of podcasters do this too, is when you're thinking of what you're going to do later on, you constantly in your day to day probably have things pop up into your head. And when you try to wrap your arms around it, first of all, just the content, it's crazy because there's how many hours of content, how many companies, as you said, but at the same time, the fans or the fan bases completely burned me out. Like being in certain Facebook groups, being on Twitter, that really burned me out on wrestling because there wasn't a ton going on. And this is kind of pre-AEW. It was like, here comes the hype. There's a lot of crazy people talking. There's a lot of crosstalk back and forth, and it's, you know, kind of team warfare type of thing, which that's a drag anyway. And then the WWE was pulling a lot of wonky stuff with a lot of their TV shows, and a lot of their stuff was almost unwatchable. And I found myself like angry every time I flipped the switch to try to podcast. I didn't even want to talk about it anymore. So I just stopped doing it. I don't even really watch Raw and SmackDown much anymore unless I catch highlights. I watch the Wednesday night shows. I try to catch, you know, different stuff on TV, like you said. And I think when you try to wrap your hands around all of it, you're going to burn yourself out. It's going to happen. And I think a lot of fans that live in the bubble would do themselves justice if they found a different fandom to kind of decompress on, like a Star Wars or horror movies or even Rick and Morty, something you can laugh at. Because to be honest, for a business that, let's be honest, can be quite silly at times, there's a lot of serious talk and a lot of tension around.
Yeah, it's rough. And going back to what you were saying about, you know, how insane the fan base can be. I was talking to a friend of mine. He's another one of my closest friends. He used to be a wrestling fan. Like, he doesn't really watch it anymore. He knows, I guess, some names. Like, he'll go on YouTube and watch clips. but he doesn't really watch it as much as he used to. And, he'll still defend it, but he's not really a fan. I had to explain to him the concept of what marks and smarks were. And you know what his response was? They do know it's fake, right? Well, the conversation started when I was talking to I was just talking about, he was asking me a question about podcasting. And I said, dealing with wrestling fans on, social media is just, it can be very toxic and it's kind of annoying. And that was his response. They do know it's fake, right? And I had to explain to them the difference between marks and smarks. And explaining it to somebody who's just kind of a casual fan it can be kind of hilarious and almost frightening at the same time.
It's weird, man. Sometimes, and I know this is probably going to be taken wrong by somebody, but when I interact with fans on social media, it seems like there's a large segment of fans out there that either have some sort of social disorder or some sort of cognitive disorder. Because, and I'm not saying that to demean anybody, but I'm saying I will literally, and I know other people have had these same conversations with people. You will have a conversation with someone, and they take everything that is said literally to the letter. No nuance, no nothing. And I just, my head explodes because I'm like, how do you not see that? Like, I saw you had the picture up of what CM Punk said to Miz. And then I saw people tweeting about how Miz or CM Punk was a piece of shit because why would you dare say, suck his dick? And these people were getting angry, and I could tell it was because they thought it was homophobic when there was nothing homophobic about it. He was pretty much just saying that Miz will do that for money. He's a sellout, and he's going to do that. So I think there's a lot of people online that just are incapable of nuanced thinking, as some other more intelligent people have said, or they just take everything super literally. Like, even to the wrestling shows, it can't be entertainment. It can't be this. It can't be that. It has to be wrestling with tights and trunks and headlocks and work rate. And it's like, holy shit, dude, take a step back.
Let me ask you a question about, like, as far as ratings go. Do you think the ratings kind of go down whenever there's too much wrestling and not enough entertainment?
Absolutely. I don't know if I'd say they go down, because even for casual fans, ratings on WWE are at an American low. Maybe not low, but trending low. But definitely you get higher ratings and more attention when you do more entertainment-based stuff. Look at Lana and Lashley. I didn't watch it. I heard it was terrible. I heard it was a train wreck. But it got 5 million views on social media, and it got some of the higher ratings that Raw has had in some time. So obviously, when you step away, and I think when you said you talked to your friend who's a super casual fan and he didn't understand that there are people that take it so seriously, I think that speaks to something. I think there's a huge audience that would enjoy it given the opportunity. If they're giving something to enjoy enough, well, they'll put up with the fact that it's a farce, and they'll put up with the fact that it is fake, or let's say contrived. I don't like to say fake. That offends people when you say that. But it's choreographed fighting, and I think a lot of people would get past that if they had something that they could really enjoy. So yeah, to your point, I think when you do too much wrestling and it's too much just technical time in the ring, yeah, I think it is a deterrent for a lot of people because they don't see it the way we do.
Because
we love the genre. We're in love with that art form. We're in love with that genre. We'll go to small shows and watch the best technicians as opposed to people who will just watch something that's going to catch their attention and keep them happy.
Because at the end of the day, don't get me wrong, I love wrestling. I love seeing old school wrestling. None of this, not the sports entertainment wrestling, not corporate wrestling, but I just love watching wrestling in general. Because what's the highest rated segment in Raw history, or just in WWE history? Was it the This Is Your Life, Mankind, or This Is Your Life Rock?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, to this day, it's like I think it's the highest rated segment, and that wasn't a wrestling thing. As a matter of fact, I think it was 22, 23 minutes, and it was almost the length of a sitcom. And it's, again, to this day, one of the highest rated segments in WWE history, and it wasn't wrestling. Because, and again, I try not to take his words too seriously, but Vince Russo was on Jericho's podcast. I don't know if you listened to it. It was actually pretty good. He talked about how I almost call it AWA, AEW and NXT.
You've been wrong.
AEW and NXT, it just seems like they have too much wrestling. Like, you have a wrestling match here, and then you have a wrestling match after the next segment, and then you have a wrestling match after the next segment. And it just seems like the audience would rather see, or the casual audience, there you go. Like, the casual fans would rather see more entertainment. They'd rather, they're not always in the mood to see more wrestling. They'd rather see entertainment. So, I guess I can understand him, but
there is some merit in that when you look at historical ratings, but there's two things, in wrestling, I always balance this. And I know if my ex-podcast partner, Benny Slash, is listening, he would probably be gobsmacked I'm saying this. You have to balance that because they always talk about, like Al Snow, he who makes the most money and draws the most fans is the best wrestler. I completely understand that because without no business, there is no match to be had. Without Hogan and Andre, 93,000 people weren't paying to see Savage Steamboat. I don't care what anybody says. But if you look historically at the wrestling business, it was healthy in its own form, at a much smaller form locally, when it was about great action. And the other side of that is, sure, Miley Cyrus at one point was the highest selling musical act, but does that make her the greatest musician?
No.
I think you really have to balance that, because if you're only going for ratings, how far away from the model of wrestling are you going to go before you are just producing sitcoms? And if that's what you want to do the what's it called, Total Divas and that crap that they put on E. That gets ratings and it's cheap to produce. Just do that. I think you do have to find that balance, though, and it really it really pains me to give Russo credit on that, because I lived through a couple of his eras, and to me, he's the Freddy Krueger of wrestling. Wrongdoing. I'm just saying. Okay. If you don't get it, I'm not talking about like extracurricular activities or anything. I'm just saying he's one of those guys where, like, if we give him attention and we give him notoriety by talking about him, we keep him alive by repeating his name. But the flip side is, if we don't talk about him, people are going to forget his legacy. And if we just ignore him and let him go away, he's going to pop back up and have a reign of terror in another company somewhere down the line. So it's almost like you don't want to talk about him, but you kind of have to save a future generation from being slaughtered in some way.
By we, do you mean Jim Cornette? You know what? You know what? Do you think the reason why Vince Russo is so hated is because of Jim Cornette?
I think that carries a lot of weight. I think Bret Hart back in the day, Bret Hart had something to do with it. There was a lot of high-profile guys that used him, and some rightfully so, as a scapegoat for stuff that was going on in the business. I think a lot of people exposed him for things he was doing behind the scenes, like in TNA and in WCW, whereas guys in earlier times that were still doing hokey shit would have been exposed too, that just hadn't had that opportunity. So I don't know. I just think he did a lot of stuff he could get away with in some cases, and in some he couldn't, and people called him on it. So if Cornette has something to do with that, I'm sure there's a lot of people who don't know about the legend of Vince Russo, I guess, for lack of a better word. But I think he's done enough to put his own foot in his mouth, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying Vince Russo is perfect, but then again, anyone in the wrestling business is not perfect. They're far from perfect. I mean,
and to your point, yeah, I think he does really hit that nail on the head, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but to answer your question, that is, I think, the one thing that he says that gets a lot of flack, because people that like wrestling are in the bubble and in the business don't like to hear that the rest of the world doesn't think wrestling's cool.
Yeah.
They enjoy it if there's cool stuff on it, but they don't think wrestling itself is cool, and people don't want to hear that. Just like people in WCW in the early 90s, they didn't want to hear that it was too Southern or only to a certain demographic. And then guess what happened? The other people, like Jim Herd, I would say Jim Herd may be misunderstood because some of the changes he wanted to make and was not as politically astute about it, Eric Bischoff made, and it made the company successful.
Oh, I mean,
I'm saying as far as making it less regionally appropriate and broadening out a little bit, going more national, that's what I'm saying. So I'm not saying him or Russo are perfect. I'm just saying I don't think we should throw the baby out with the bathwater, although it does pain me to give Russo that kind of credit.
Well, also with Russo, I equate it to, and this is just a theory I have. Anyone is more than willing to disagree with me or challenge me on it, but I think a guy like Russo is kind of similar to a guy like Kevin Nash, where they're guys who they respect the business and they love the business, but they don't take it 24/7 hardcore like a guy like Bret Hart would. Kevin Nash at the end of the day said, "Yeah, I love the business, but I also like getting paid." He was asked the question of, what's real about the business, and he goes, the money and the miles. And a guy like Kevin Nash gets a lot of heat because he takes it seriously, but not to the point where he has to make it his whole life, if that makes sense.
And I think that helps. And again, to bring up your point of your friend that casually watches and doesn't understand the diehards, I think when it's almost like the cult of the business, because the wrestling business in some ways is like a cult. You're ingrained in it. You're kind of abused into it. You got to, earn your keep. If you're not completely in love and obsessed over being in the WWE, they don't want you. But if you're too much into it, like you're a mark and they don't respect you, it's really, really an odd industry to try to navigate. And I don't envy anyone who has to, but I think when you get too ingrained in that and it's too wrestling, you can't take a step back and look at everything else that's going on. Like Kevin Nash, you said, is able to do. He's not obsessed with drop toe hold and I'm going to be the best proficient technician there is. He wants to do what he does. Undertaker was on Broken Skull Sessions a couple weeks ago. And he talked about that, where he was mad when he went to the WWF because he's, almost 7 feet tall. He can legitimately, probably do backflips off the top rope. But here he is as the Undertaker doing character work. He's turning his head. He's sitting up. He's choking people when he wants to be having matches with Bret Hart and Hakushi and Shawn Michaels that tear the house down. And he was much more successful because he played that character as opposed to going out there like a lot of other guys do and try to have those 4-star, 5-star matches.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
Yeah. Oh, no, you're good. You're good.
Well, no, I guess I need to watch it again because I didn't hear him saying he was mad or anything. I'm not trying to, say you're lying or anything, but that part, when he brought that up, I thought that was interesting. I thought it was very smart when he said that, what I heard was him saying he wanted to get the character over first rather than get himself over. And that is sorely missing in the wrestling business because you have a lot of guys, you have a lot of girls who they want to go out there and get their moves over. They want to go out there and get their weird catchphrases over rather than get themselves over. I think one of the few guys I can think about that's actually more worried about getting his character over is MJF. MJF,
sure.
If I'm going to watch AEW for any reason, it's him. Because as far as wrestling goes, he's, I guess, kind of basic, but he doesn't need... his character is bigger than wrestling. Or his wrestling,
Yeah, and if his character's bigger than wrestling, he doesn't have to be doing, toe holds and face locks and stuff like that and chain wrestling because his gimmick is what he's supposed to be doing. And if he gets enough heat, he doesn't have to do all that stuff to get heat. He's already got it. And I'll be honest with you, man, I've said a lot of things on social media and had conversations with people that are very negative on AEW. And I think it's because I had high hopes. I, like you, lived through the Monday Night War. So when I heard here's a new company, they're going to be on TNT, they got some serious money behind them. When they came out on that first show, it looks like a big show. Even when they do like the weird, like the music hall sets in Jacksonville, I think it is. They just did it a couple weeks ago. It still looks like a big production. It looks big budget. And then they like troll out all the shindy stuff. And it's like so disappointing because they're there. They have people that have worked in television. Like who's the producer? Keith Mitchell?
I don't know.
Keith David, but that's the dude from the John Carpenter movies.
Smart.
Yeah. So Keith Mitchell is a producer. He's with WCW and TNA. They have guys like Art Anderson and Dean Malenko working for them. They got Goldust, Dustin Runnels working for them in some capacities. So to know that they have those people working there, And it's interesting to see some of those people gravitate toward AEW. And I want to ask you a question about this.
Good.
To me, to some people, it may seem subtle, but I think it goes deeper. There was a lot of guys that worked for WCW or were CW that had really nowhere else to go. I got no place else to go for the rest of the old fucks in the room. After WCW closed, so they begrudgingly worked for WWE and worked for Vince McMahon. And now I know Cody is, in some ways trying to recapture the spirit of WCW. But there's like a lot of legacy WCW guys that are trying to really push this along. Like DDP's there, Cody's there, Dustin, they're carrying on Dusty's tradition a little bit. Arn Anderson's there. You've got Dean Malenko. It seems like there's these guys that like were in a holding pattern after WCW closed, and now they're there. But the company, like this, I don't know, that the style and the action doesn't embody WCW. It just feels like a big budget shindy, and I think that was really disappointing to me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but I don't know. I really like some things about it. It's just, I don't know, man. I don't know what I'm trying to say. My bad.
Oh, so what was your question?
Do you see that it's not just, hey, we're going to be like WCW because we're on TNT, but do you see the correlation there with like all these people who were able to now leave WWE from WCW that used to be there back in the day, like Malenko, like Arn Anderson? I don't know.
I guess I'm kind of confused by the question. So, like, all right, let me try to like digest it a little bit. So, like, you're asking me, do I kind of see AEW as more of a WCW like substitute or something, or is that the question?
No. I don't know if there was a question. I might have lost a point in there, which happens frequently with me. So I'm sorry.
Oh, you and me both, man. I'll be in an argument. I'll try to like give out an argument to somebody or say something to somebody, and all of a sudden it's one of those things like it sounds better in my head, and then when it comes out, I'm just like, oh, that I probably should have wrote that down first, or maybe done a rough draft about it.
About it a lot, and I know it seems surface level. Because Cody, he's trying to, trademark certain terms. And I know a lot of people would say that they're cosplaying wrestling, which in a lot of cases it feels like they are. But, like, it almost seems like they would have maybe they have an opportunity to take up that, to inherit that spirit and that tradition, except Billy Corgan owns the NWA, I guess. It's just... to me, it was disappointing because it felt like it was almost a return to form for fans that enjoyed WCW back in the day, but none of that is represented on the show. Maybe that's what I was trying to say. I don't know. And that they're close and they have an opportunity, but like you said, they're worried about doing other things. They're worried about, like the Young Bucks. How many matches can the Young Bucks have? Their tag and 6-man matches where they do the exact same shit. If I've seen one of their matches, I've seen them all. And this is dating back to like when I started watching them in Japan. I can't watch it. And even the Lucha Brothers at this point, they're great, but it's always the same shit and there's never really a story there. And to your point earlier, if guys would focus on, the character work or doing certain things at a certain time, maybe that's why it's so frustrating to me, is because they would have, some of the quality to go along with that legacy of the alternative to WWE, but they just come off as a WWE light, which is what they promised they wouldn't do.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the Young Bucks, guys like the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, a lot of that video game wrestling shit that they do, it's going to come back to haunt them. They're going to crash and burn for it, and it's not something I wish on them to happen, but they need to realize getting that WWE money is not exactly going to be a bad thing. And what I mean by that is, yeah, will WWE know how to use them? I don't know. I mean, we didn't think they knew how to use AJ, but then again, that's AJ. I mean, between AJ and Kenny Omega, I'm going to choose AJ all day. But for WWE, they'll teach you how to do their WWE wrestling. In other words, they'll prolong your career. They'll make sure you're not taking so many risks, taking too many high spots. When AJ came back here in 2016, and he's been here 4 years later, and he's out there having some of the best matches he's had in a while. He's a lot more charismatic on the mic than he ever was in TNA. So eventually, guys like Kenny and the Young Bucks and Adam Page especially, between that whole Bullet Club elite, crap, I choose Adam Page. I think Adam Page has better upside. I think he looks more ready for WWE television. Like that's a guy. Sure, yeah. That's a guy I can imagine WWE seeing and going, "We want that guy on television now." Like he looks more believable in the ring next to Roman Reigns. Put Kenny against Roman Reigns. The casual fan is gonna see Kenny and going, who's this guy? He looks like the guy who's gonna put the other guy over. A guy like. Go ahead.
I know you had a point you were getting to. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was kind of finishing up, but a guy like Kenny does not look serious next to a guy like Roman, or Drew McIntyre, for that example.
I agree, but I also think with the right presentation, Kenny could look like a threat. Like a couple years when his contract was up, people thought he was going to be at the Rumble. I was completely fantasy booking, but the one thing I was thinking of is, man, if they come down to like number 30, not that they would ever have done this, but if they come down to number 30 and you've got all the WWE, top guys in the ring and some other worker guys that could make this work, if all of a sudden like the LED board shorts out, because I think at the time Kenny was doing like a Terminator type entrance in New Japan, like LED board shorts out, screen shorts out, similar to how they used to do with Jericho, and then all of a sudden it looks like an electrical storm. And then there's a spotlight on the ramp. And there's a guy crouched down, Terminator. When like the Terminator comes through the time warp in the movie. I don't know, we're dating ourselves here, but old guys be old guys, I guess.
Yeah, I love Terminator.
And all of a sudden, up on the screen, you just see Omega, and then he like stands up like the freaking Terminator. And I think if it a big enough city, enough people would have known who he was. Like AJ, the building would have come alive a little bit. It would have been a cool entrance. And I think you could have built some mythology into him. Like, here's this guy, not the biggest guy, but he's tenacious. He has a certain charisma, I guess, in some cases. But here he is, just goes up against guy after guy and just shreds through people. No matter how big or how strong they were. I think you could have done that. But again, I don't know if WWE was up for the task. But, I don't know, man. I like Adam Page. He just seems to have almost no personality. I don't. Physically, yeah, he looks like he can hang, but he just doesn't have a ton of personality.
I think he's okay as far as personality goes. I mean, stick him with a mouthpiece. I would say here's my kind of fantasy booking. You bring him into the WWE, put him in a stable with someone like Andrade, and have Zelina have her own stable of guys where she's managing, like Andrade, or have her manage Adam Page, have her manage Drew McIntyre, like have her kind of be like Paul Heyman, where she's not just managing guys, or even girls. She can manage girls too, not just on the Raw roster, but on the SmackDown roster.
She can manage girls. Sorry,
hi-oh. or an NXT. Sorry. Have her do that. That'd be something interesting. I wouldn't mind seeing that. Going back to the Rumble, you saw that Brock Lesnar, he's gonna enter the Royal Rumble at number 1 as the champion.
Yeah. Yes, and not to vamp, but I did talk about this on this week's B Show podcast. So I may repeat a few things, but I think it's fine. And I don't know. Brock entering at number 1. I really don't think there's anywhere else to go with Brock at this point, because who knows how long he's going to be around. He overshadowed everyone in the WWE because every time someone gets hot, they kind of feed him. Look what happened to Braun. Braun made some mistakes in the ring, or said some shit that thanks pins or pints. We're having.
I just saw Pince's comment. You get it, lesbians.
No, sorry, Pints. I'm having a pock pack moment with your name. Every time I see you in the chat, I don't know how to pronounce it. So, bshowpodcast.com. It'll take you to the Spreaker page, Brian J's B Show. There you go. Thank you for telling me to plug it. But in Perk Dog 44, I get not entering the Rumble, but who's he going to face at this point? I talked about this a couple years ago with a friend of mine, Oh, thanks. That really helps spelled out in the chat. I'm going to know how it's not phonetically. Anyway, once again, pints. So with Brock, he's gone through everybody. They've had to resort to bringing in outside guys to face him, like Kane, and they're talking about the boxer, who reminds me of Soda Popinski from Punch Out, if anyone remembers that.
Oh, man.
But, coming in at number one, one thing it will allow him to do. So, for those of you who are kind of down on this, it's not going to crush anybody in a lame duck title defense at Rumble. So there's that. Second, Brock is going to be able, depending on how long he's in the Rumble, to have matchups with guys that he would never, because of his limited schedule and rare air that he breathes, would never have a match with. So he could run up against Big E. He could run up against Baron Corbin. Some people like him. I don't get it. He could run up against a Keith Lee or a Walter, depending on who's going to be in the matchup. So it'll at least... It reminds me in some way of Ric Flair from the 92 Rumble. Not that it's as star-studded, not that it seems that important, but there's a lot of baked-in angles with stuff that's already happened with Brock, and there's a lot of different ways they can go with it. So I will say that about Brock being in the Rumble.
Personally, all right. Let me just like clarify something. Is he entering at number one?
Yeah, I think Heyman did come out and say he's entering at number one.
Okay, so I don't see Brock lasting that long because he can only really work like maybe like a 7-minute match at best. Or I mean maybe he's gonna like up his stamina, and by up it I mean steroids. But I don't see him lasting that long in the match. Somebody's gonna eliminate him. Like here's what I think is gonna happen. He's gonna eliminate everybody. Yeah, like Diesel, Perk Dog. He's gonna eliminate everybody, or like Austin. Back in, the 97 Rumble? He's just going to eliminate everybody, then he's going to be in the ring for like a minute waiting for the next person to come out, and then the ring's going to get full with more people. I could honestly see someone like a Keith Lee eliminating him, and that could tease, his Mania opponent, because, the talk, going around is that, everybody loves Keith Lee, especially after, the Survivor Series, his Survivor Series appearance. Like, Vince actually gave him a standing ovation and hugged him. So, and the talk was that the company is looking at him as like a legit, threat or a legit matchup to Brock. I can see it because, again, Keith Lee's a big guy. Brock's a big guy. Keith can go out there and work. He has amazing charisma. I could see him as the champion. I can see him as the guy that the WWE can put out on Good Morning America, or to go to a mall and open up a store. Like he looks
like Carl Winslow. He does. He looks like American.
I didn't think about that, honestly. I remember somebody. I was listening to a soup on here. It might have been like a soup or a side salad. Somebody had the comment of Keith Lee looks like a '90s TV dad.
Yeah.
But but here's and Don Tony. Got to go back to Don Tony.
And not to cut you off, but to your point with how Brock sells finishes, could you imagine Keith Lee pouncing him the fuck out of the ring?
Ooh,
that'd be a thing of beauty.
I want that to happen. But going back to Don Tony brought up a good point about Keith Lee, because a lot of people's their cons about Keith Lee is that he looks too nice. Don Tony made the point of, yeah, he looks like a nice guy, but you do not want to see him pissed off. Like, he looks like a big teddy bear, but you piss him off, he'll turn into a fucking grizzly and rip. I'm showing my age,
but yeah, the thing from Roadhouse: be nice until it's time not to be nice.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And Keith Lee has it, and yeah, that's probably my only booking of the Rumble. Like, I can see Keith Lee winning. The Rumble was only going to be for another 2 weeks, but honestly, I can see Keith Lee throwing out Brock, and then it comes down to him and Roman to kind of, finish that storyline that happened at Survivor Series. And Keith can throw out Roman.
I like that. I kind of like that. It makes sense. It's full circle. And it's one of those, Paul Heyman fake out angles or swerves where you think the finish, because obviously it's Roman. He's going to throw out Keith Lee, and then he eliminates him. I kind of like that.
So, yeah, Keith versus Brock. I mean, that could be a main event. That could be your main event at Mania.
It could be. And a lot of people can, and I even talked about this on the B Show, which can be found at bshowpodcast.com. I'm going to milk that for all it's worth now. Hey, I was trying to be unshameless, and Pints told me to go ahead and plug, so I'm going to plug away.
God damn it, Pints. Go ahead.
Conventional wisdom would say, no, you're good. Conventional wisdom with wrestling, a lot of wrestling fans I know go into, things should be this way and that way. A lot of people would say maybe Keith Lee can't get over in that time, or maybe you don't start off a guy like Keith Lee that hot in the main event because you have nowhere to go. But if you look at Keith Lee, you look at what he does, you look at his size, not that he's an old man, but I mean, for what he does, he's been doing it a while. How long do you really have to give him to marinate and mature? Do you roll the dice and just put him right into the main event scene and make him a force to be reckoned with, kind of like they did with Del Rio a little bit a couple years ago? Or do you put him on TV for 3 or 4 years and let him kind of build, and then you put the title on him, or you make him a contender and he blows out his ACL?
So what you're saying is now that he's pretty much hot and on fire, you need to kind of capitalize on it. Don't just wait another year and a half until like something bad happens to him.
Exactly. I don't think they have the luxury of waiting, because even they went to Fox, the ratings have been down. They're having to resort to publicity stunts to try to keep ratings up on Raw with the wedding and stuff like that. And they're running out of these guys that they can call back. Batista, he's done. CM Punk, with what he said to The Miz, I wouldn't see him in WWE. And honestly, with him and his attitudes on the business, I don't see him for that fact either. So they're growing very short on people they can call back and main eventers. And let's be honest, Seth Rollins is kind of worn out his welcome too. He's not setting the world on fire. So why don't you take a chance, take a guy who's probably going to start breaking down in 4 or 5 years, and instead of waiting for him to come along, just roll with it now. If it doesn't get over, Brock could always beat him. And you still have other stuff to hang your hat on, because it looks like they're probably going to let Becky main event anyway, regardless of whether she feels like, the guys have shit the bed before or not. I'm sorry, I'm getting off on that comment. But
did you see the thing that she posted? I don't. Yeah. Was that like an article, or was that like a Reddit thing? Because I don't have the quote in front of me, but just to kind of shorten it, she said, guys have had guys have had main events at pay-per-views for the longest time. They've had bad matches, but I have one subpar match, and all of a sudden, people question if women should main event. And actually, you know what? I have my phone next to me, so I can just pull up that quote.
Yeah, go ahead. And I think it was an interview that she had done, or some sort of appearance. I don't know if it was just a Reddit thread. But yeah, she pretty much said, oh my God, she said, and I don't know the tone because I didn't read it. I saw the headline, which I shouldn't probably comment on until I hear it. But, it's not fair.
I have it.
The women are coming. You got it. Go ahead. I'll save it to hear it.
I guess it looks like a random Facebook interview. But it says 1 million guys have had terrible terrible main event matches. But if I have one subpar main event match, the question comes up whether women should be main eventing. End quote.
But she's had consistent bad main event matches. It's not one. She's had consistent bad main event matches. And even, I don't know, it wasn't her fault because she wasn't headlining this. But when they're talking about the argument of whether women should main event or not, I'm not saying they should or shouldn't. I'm not saying women don't draw, because that's obviously an antiquated argument. In the right circumstances, they most certainly can. But if you look at the Women's Evolution pay-per-view, they had to deep discount tickets to try to fill that place up.
Yeah.
Potentially unsuccessful, that they haven't done it again. So when you're operating from a position of trying to prove people wrong, and you're consistently, I love Becky. I think she's super talented. I don't know if her character is still clicking as it was. Maybe it's worn out. I'm not sure. But when you have pay-per-view main event after pay-per-view main event, and not just her, other than like Charlotte and a couple other of the ladies, there have been consistently bad women's main event matches over the past probably, 12 to 18 months on WWE TV. So it's not just an isolated incident.
Now, let me ask you this. Do you think do you think the women are the problem, or do you think of how the matches are booked?
I think being overproduced doesn't help, and I don't necessarily think it's the women. I do think there's a large part of the rest of the population in general that just doesn't buy women as the attraction. So I do think it does hurt in a little bit. I'll give you an example. My buddy Andy, shout out to Andy Ruff. He's a lifelong friend of mine. His dad loved wrestling. He tried to show his dad Becky versus Sasha from TakeOver, the first one that just was awesome. His dad didn't. He's like, I don't care how good it is. I don't care. So I think you do have a lot of those casual fans out there that don't buy it. You can always replace them with casuals that do buy it. But I think they're overproduced. I think they did the women a disservice by having Ronda Rousey mow through everybody and then just disappear. I think they did a disservice to the women by trying to force Ronda versus Charlotte and making Becky an afterthought, and then at the last minute shoving her in there to try to pacify people. Because then by the time they went with her, it was kind of over and done with anyway. People knew it was an afterthought. So I think there's a lot of things. I don't think it's just because it's women, to be fair. But I do think there are some people who aren't going to buy it. Someone mentioned Tessa versus Charlotte. A properly promoted Tessa versus Charlotte, I think, could main event WrestleMania, no question. But they really shot themselves in the foot by having Ronda kill everybody and then just go away for a year. So I don't know.
Yeah,
Does that answer? I kind of got off on a tangent.
No. You hit the nail on the head. I mean, Kevin Castle made it very simple. Ronda Rousey leaving has kind of left a void in the women's division, because Ronda Rousey, I think, brought in the rating. She made the women's division a little bit more legit and more interesting to watch. The feud with Becky and Ronda was all Ronda. Like, Becky was getting her, her jabs in as far as talking shit. But what made it more interesting was Ronda, because Ronda was able to back it up. So I just saw what you said. Her Adam's apple was delicious.
Hey, for those not in the chat, only because Perk Dog says she has an Adam's apple. So.
I don't know how to answer that, but I mean, Becky. Again, love Becky. She's a great wrestler. We're not taking away from her wrestling. It's just her character. You know what I equate, and I made kind of like a, I guess however you want to look at it, like kind of like a perverted equation of how Becky's character is. She's kind of like that girl. Like, if you guys are in high school or bachelors or whatever, you can maybe relate to this. Or maybe I might be the only one that can relate to this. I don't know. But she's kind of like that girl that you guys met up on MySpace or My Yearbook, if anyone ever used My Yearbook.
Holy shit, now we're really showing our age.
Jesus. Yeah, I'm a perv. Pins, deal with it. It's kind of like that girl that you guys would, I guess, message a lot, and you guys were always like sexting and talking about what you're going to do to each other if you guys ever met. And then you guys finally meet, and you guys just go all out. And when you guys are not constantly, fucking or doing whatever, you just kind of realize, I guess she's really not that interesting outside of me banging her. I guess that's really my only way to explain Becky, where when the man character started, it was interesting. And now it really is just not that interesting. Especially when you had Ronda Rousey into the mix, and now that you have her away, she's really not that interesting, because there's really nobody else for her to really have a good program with except Charlotte, but we've seen that 8 million times.
Do you think it has anything to do with the fact that they kind of have Becky coming out there and talking like she's a badass, but Ronda's the real badass? Like, if Ronda was never there, obviously it would have not gotten to the level it did as far as reach, because Ronda's Ronda. She's a celebrity. So obviously the landscape would be different. They wouldn't have as much attention on them. But excuse me, do you think if Ronda wasn't there to be compared to Becky, that Becky would have fared a little bit better? That it wouldn't have, like, your tough guy act wouldn't have seemed as hokey?
You're asking me if Ronda wasn't there, would Becky's character worked out better?
Do you think her being juxtaposed or positioned next to Ronda, who is a legitimate combat fighter, hurts her because it shines a light on how phony her tough guy character is when she does that?
I think so, personally. Because, again, I love Becky, but this gimmick just, like, her gimmick just doesn't seem very genuine. Like, I think she was going through, like, a month of her just, like literally trying to pick fights with people. Like, someone would just look at her and she'd be like, "What are you looking at?" And it's like, "Nothing, Becky. I'm just trying to get that donut." "You don't need donuts, fatty. I'll punch you in your face if you look at donuts again." Like, and that wasn't really like an actual vignette that happened. But let me ask you this: do you think Rhea Ripley is what WWE wished Becky was?
Yeah, maybe Rhea or even Shayna Baszler.
Well, Shayna Baszler.
I get the Rhea thing. I get the Rhea comparison. I do see that.
Yeah, because Rhea Ripley legit looks like somebody who can beat the fuck out of you. Like, because she's tall and she's a brick shithouse. Like, she doesn't look... I'm trying to compare it. Like, she's not Nicole... she's not, like, China-looking badass. I mean, she's kind of close to it, except Rhea Ripley can actually wrestle. But Rhea Ripley, when she talks and the way she carries herself, you think, I'm not going to pick a fight with this broad.
Yeah, Ripley is a feminine-looking, very attractive woman who just happens to be, cut up and very strong, very athletic. Whereas Shayna Baszler, no disrespect, but she was talking about on Twitter about a week ago. People were saying, about the women wrestling men thing and how, she's beaten many men her same size. But it's like, yeah, but dude, you look like you could just walk down the street and steal people's lunch money at will. You don't look like the average chick who's yours. Like, even the average MMA fighter does not look like her. You've got some pretty girls, you got some badass, fighters, but Shayna Baszler just looks mean and nasty, like she would fuck you up.
I heard her on when she was on Corey Graves' podcast. The way she came off was like, she seems like somebody who's kind of a dick. Like, and she didn't come out and say it, but just the way she was kind of like, she was talking about herself. I'm like, yeah, she kind of seems like a dick, honestly.
Speaking of that, I think that's hurting Becky because I think she was charismatic and likable. She was like really cute and likable. And then when they did the man thing, she just seemed arrogant. I know someone in the chat, I don't know if it was Pines Perk Dog or someone else who was in there, but Becky now doesn't like you mentioned her like almost being a bully, right? So I think that hurts the character too, because before she came off as like an ass kicker who wasn't afraid of a fight, like when she started fucking with the guys, like to me, that was the chick at school and I relate things to high school. I don't know why, but that was the chick in high school that was tough, but would like bow up on dudes because she knew she wouldn't get hit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, she was tough, but like she talks shit and you're like, if things weren't the way they were, you wouldn't like, okay. I know I kind of sound like a piece of shit here, so let me clear the air. No, I would not hit her, but what I'm saying is it comes off with that girl who talks shit because she knows she can talk shit because there's no repercussions, which is why the thing with Corbin worked as well as it did. I mean, when he laid her out.
Which I'm still baffled as to why they never tried to continue that storyline. And not that I wanted to see Baron constantly, hurt Becky, but more like literally after that night, they didn't continue it. They didn't have Seth try to continue to beat the shit out of Corbin. Instead, they just had him focus on Brock. You know what I mean? It's like in real life, I'm not just going to beat your ass up. I'm not just going to beat your ass once for hurting my girl. I'm going to continue it until there's nothing left. But yeah,
for sure. I see that too. I think they were too afraid of the blowback. I really do. I think they were too afraid to go too far with it. I think they tested it and they saw that they could do it in small doses, but they weren't going to carry it out. But I don't know, man. I really think. I think they did drop the boat with not having Seth come out. Like, Seth should have kicked his ass every time he saw him, like, for eternity.
Yeah. And you know what? I have another question. Because you said the man gimmick hurt Becky more. Do you think that hurt her more, or do you think her relationship with Seth hurt her more?
Well, that definitely didn't do her any service for sure. He was like persona non grata on social media for a while. They were trying to be have him be the top guy, and of course he was getting not rejected because he still had his fans, but like, yeah, I think that did hurt. And I know they did an interview about it where she said they never wanted to acknowledge the relationship as an angle. But I don't know, man. I won't blame any one thing on her being a woman. I won't blame it on just booking. I won't blame it on any one thing. I think there's a lot going on there at play, and it just was a perfect storm of just WWE. Let me ask you a question. I know I don't know if I answered it directly, but let me ask you a question.
Good.
Do you see any correlation between how WWE books their top baby faces and how Vince McMahon kind of has a warped sense of what a hero is? Look at Becky. She was cute and she was lovable, but she was tough. And then she became a bully when they tried to push her. And we've seen some shit with like John Cena back in the day with Zack Ryder, where Zack Ryder was in love with Eve Torres, and then John Cena took her back to his hotel room, and what's his name? Zack Ryder was just standing there like crying with his action figures, with his leg in a cast. He's in a wheelchair, and Kane's killing him. You know what I mean? Sometimes it looks like it. Maybe it's just speculation. I don't know. But when you're talking about booking of Becky and the angle, like, I don't know, WWE seems to have like a broken compass when it comes to like how a hero and a villain would act.
I don't think it's so much as a hero or villain. WWE just has a hard time booking human beings. They don't know. No, I'm serious. They don't know how to book people having real human emotions. Like, it doesn't matter if you're a heel or a face. If someone or something pisses you off, like, you should have a natural human reaction to that. Going back to that Cena and Ryder thing, where it's like, it doesn't matter if Zack Ryder has a goofy looking hairstyle. If someone is making out with your girl, beat the fuck out of them. Like, be a man and beat the fuck out of them. Like, that's a natural human reaction. That's not just a natural guy thing. That's a natural human reaction. And when Seth beat the shit out of Corbin after he laid out Becky, that was probably the most human I've ever seen Seth. And I just remember that, Corbin getting in Seth's face going, what are you going to do about it? And Seth just proceeds to beat the living piss out of him. Other than that, the WWE they don't know how to book. They don't know how to book reality or real humans. Another example. Survivor Series, Ray versus Brock. Brock beats the shit. He humiliates Ray in front of his family. He beats up his son, and they're supposed to have this personal, blood feud at Survivor Series. And Ray comes out dressed as the fucking Joker. And I understand. And I understand Ray's whole thing is he likes to cosplay, he likes to dress up as like superheroes, whatever. And he's done it before. He did it at WrestleMania, 10 years ago, dressed up as Heath's Joker. And he was dressed up as, as Joaquin Phoenix's Joker. But it's like, this is where I nitpick. It's all about reality. Because it's just hard picturing Ray going, all right, son, we need to defend our honor. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to give Brock all I got. Now hand me my clown nose. You know what I mean?
Put my nose on. Strap this purple dildo to your forehead. Let's go.
Like, I can't picture my dad, going after somebody who tried to threaten, our family, going, all right, son, we need to beat up this guy who tried to threaten our family. We need to let him know what's what. Now, hand me my rainbow wig.
Like, I know this would have been like against, like completely against cause, and people would probably want to tar and feather me for just suggesting it. Shouldn't Ray have come out no mask on? Beat the shit out of Brock. Well, yeah, I take that back. That's kind of dumb. I take that back.
Well, what I suggested is just like, come out in jeans. Come out in jeans and a t-shirt and boots. And then with your your steel lead pipe that's not really a steel lead pipe.
How about a bandana? He used to do the street shit when he was in like the Filthy Animals or whatever. Just, Perk Dog. Dude, Perk Dog has it. A Jason mask.
Like, again, this is how I would have booked it. You would have had Ray on, like, the Raw before that, Survivor Series going, Brock, you mess with me, you mess with my family. You don't mess with my family. At Survivor Series, you're going to get Rey Mysterio. You're going to get Oscar Gutierrez, his real name, and then he takes off his mask, showing his real face. You're going to get the man, the father. You're not going to get the wrestler. You're going to get the man and the father. We're going to fight. We're not going to wrestle. Like that would have been interesting to see.
I think that's where I was going with it. Yeah, I think you put it a lot better than I did, but I think that's the spirit of what I was trying to capture.
Like, I don't mean, again, at the end of the day, WWE has no idea how to make humans. They cannot. I don't know if it's because they refuse to or they just don't know how to.
I think it's the Irish thing. Have you ever seen Halloween 3?
Which one? I'm trying to remember which storyline that was.
Evil Irish warlock. He creates like these androids to do his bidding. I just think Irish, I don't know. They're evil and... I'm just joking. I know there's probably some Irish people listening.
Wait, Halloween 3 was about androids?
Yes. Well, okay. Halloween 3, spoiler alert on a 40-year-old movie. And this is part of what I do. I actually have a YouTube channel where I talk about horror history, and I did a video on this a while back. The first movie was super successful. The second movie was okay, but they killed off Michael Myers. John Carpenter and Deborah Hill absolutely did not want to continue. Sorry to deter the wrestling conversation for a sec. Fuck yeah, pints. Silver Shamrock, bitch. They did not want to continue the story of Michael Myers. They figured they wrapped it up. They didn't want to just cash in, so they talked the producers into doing an anthology-like series to release Halloween-themed films every year. It got derailed because Halloween 3 bombed completely, but it was basically about this basically a warlock posing as like the CEO of the most popular toy company around, and his masks, the Halloween 3, were the most popular Halloween masks, and through a mix of like black magic and technology, he had a plot to like bring about like a worldwide sacrifice of all the world's children through the masks. It's really sinister sounding, but it didn't really connect well, and it bombed, and they moved on pretty quickly. But that's the gist on Halloween 3. I really like it. I think it's super underrated. It's a cult film, but I love Halloween 3.
Was that Season of the Witch?
Yeah, Season of the Witch. Yep.
Okay, I didn't see that.
You remember?
Yeah, the first two I remember. And then the one with Danielle Harris. And I kind of watched the sixth one with Paul Rudd. And the only reason why I remember it is because I just remember literally turning it on and seeing Paul Rudd get into the car and leave. And my first thought was that Paul Rudd? And that's how I remember that movie.
Paul Rudd is a great mix of cringe and awesome in that movie.
Yeah, even Paul Rudd doesn't remember that movie. and that was his first film.
Someone asked him about it. He said that he loved the character, and if he had the chance, he would love to go. He would love to revisit the character if possible, but there's no way they're going to do that.
Yeah, because I know in the one that's coming up, I believe it's like this year. They're bringing back a couple characters.
You're breaking up. I can't hear you, buddy.
Hold on. Okay, how do I sound?
Good now.
Okay, because like the one that's coming out like this year, which is the sequel to the most recent one, like they're bringing back a bunch of characters, right?
So Halloween 2018 retconned everything after the original Halloween. So no Halloween 2 at the hospital, no sister, none of that. Nothing post that. No weird cult storyline. Nothing exists. Not even H2O. Mm-hmm. So it was just the original Halloween night. He was captured, went back to jail. Then he came back, and it was kind of a requel, a sequel, and a reboot. And now they had the confrontation, and he's coming back. It's a sequel to the 2018 one. So,
all right, how did you feel about that, where they just like said everything that happened after Halloween 1 doesn't exist? Like, how did you personally feel about that?
I understood it, and I kind of got it because there wasn't really anywhere else to go. And again, I don't want to keep plugging, but if you go Brian J's Horror History, I put together a 3-part video. I know it's kind of long; it's like 3 7-minute videos. But it kind of details the behind the scenes and like why the series ended up so fractured and incoherent. They essentially like retconned it 2 or 3 times. and then they left themselves with nowhere to go, and then they brought in Rob Zombie, and then that was, some people enjoyed it. It did very well, but I don't know. I kind of half liked the new one. I half disliked it, not because they retconned things. I understand why it made it cleaner and it gave it a more coherent story, which I think it needed. But there was some stuff I liked about it, some stuff I didn't, to be honest with you.
All right, so yeah, Perk Dog is bringing up how the movie was very SJW, and it's not just him that said that. A lot of other people, said that the movie was very much of a social justice, message. I personally didn't see it. I enjoyed it. I thought it was very good. It wasn't too gory. It didn't skim on the violence, but it wasn't like the Rob Zombie movies where it's like, no, let's show how we how we cut out his eye and squish his eyeball and make it into eyeball soup or whatever the fuck Rob Zombie did. They were very more like it's what you didn't see, like that scene
which
where
historically is more terrifying anyway in some ways.
Yeah, it's like it's like this scene where the cops show up and you see that guy's head into a jack-o'-lantern. Like you knew those cops were gonna die, but they didn't show you how it happened, which I liked. I prefer that. to happen.
Me too, and I have been waiting for someone to do that since I think around Halloween Resurrection. That was in a fan fiction. A lot of people have probably thought of that idea because it's not too far of a stretch. But there was a fan fiction I read, and at the very beginning, it opens up on the Myers house. You close in, and it looks like a jack-o'-lantern, but it's actually a dude's face carved up. So that was kind of funny when I saw that. I'm like, dude, they took that from a fan fiction, which is pretty cool. And the SJW thing, I'll say yes and no to that. The reason it didn't bother me as much, some of it did. The reason it didn't bother me as much on this film is because the whole film was about the trauma of a survivor. So it fit with the series. Now, if they would have went back and taken a different series and tried to do that, maybe I would have cried foul. But in this case, it kind of made sense. The only thing that did bug me was when the granddaughter's talking to Lori at the school, I think it was. She came to give her money. Her daughter just blurts out the most ham-fisted line, "Just get over it." Because that's like a hashtag at the time. Right. Why can't you just get over it? And that was kind of shoehorned in there probably to meet that quota. That's the only thing that bugged me. I didn't mind it about this because, to be honest, I thought it kind of fit with the series. And they'd already done it before with H2O. It was less trying to make it about social justice, although I guess they did make what's his name, Artie, the strongest man of the world, the douchebag dad. So I get why people say it's SJW. It didn't really bug me as much though because of the subject matter.
Yeah, I mean, for a movie like that, it makes sense. You're right. For say a Black Christmas, where they just turned that, and I didn't see it. I'm just going by what people have told me that I actually did see it. They made that into a giant, let's hate men type of movie. Let's make this into a Me Too SJW fest. And
even people I know on Twitter that are kind of like SJW told me that movie was fucking terrible.
Yeah, and I just remember the original Black Christmas. Didn't like everybody die in it? Because the original Black Christmas was about a killer inside a sorority house. And this one, they say it's about an underground society that hates women or blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, that didn't happen. Oh,
that's fucking terrible.
I'm just going by the trailer and by what everyone told me. But why do you think a lot of these movie companies they can't help themselves as far as like they have to tell their story? And it's not. And here's the thing. I don't even think it's them wanting to tell the story. I think it's because they're just pushed into telling that story.
That's true. And there's nothing wrong with telling your story. They just used to do it with subtext.
It's kind of like with the Marvel superhero stuff and the comics where, and I was talking to this with a friend, I don't have a problem with these comic books and these movies wanting to tell their stories, wanting to tell their civil rights issues or their social issues. I really don't. But a lot of it just feels very, I'm going to use a word you just use, ham-fisted. Like, it just, a lot of it seems very forced. Especially, it's like, if you want to make a gay superhero, cool. but make a new hero. Make an entirely unique, original character. Don't just make Captain America a gay man. Don't make Batman a Filipino transgendered superhero. Like, make your own superhero. Or, you know what? Take that character and give them another personality. It's like with the Green Lantern. The Green Lantern isn't just one person. The Ring chooses everybody. It chooses a lot of other heroes. Or at the end of the day,
yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead. My bad, dude.
At the end of the day, just make original characters. You know, for Halloween, like you said, it worked because this was about Laurie Strode. She had been through this traumatic experience, and she's trying to build herself back up. So it makes sense for her. That was my point.
But that's what I'm saying is the whole rape culture thing, whatever you feel about that, it was subtext in the movie. Yes, they did address like survivor trauma because she was a survivor of a horrific thing that happened. So, and that's what a lot of filmmakers used to do is they would tell their story, but they would use subtext so that people that were looking deeply at it or picked up on it would see it. And people who were just going to, get out of the sun on a hot August day and go in and see a movie, it'll go over their heads. You weren't smacked in the face with it, and you weren't told, you're a piece of shit when you go watch this movie. Most people, and I think it talks to your point earlier about, even wrestling fans. There's a lot of people that just watch TV shows and movies to escape, and they don't want to think about the social issue of the day or the problems in their life. They want to escape into what they're watching. And they want that is their, and I hate to use the term, but that's their safe space. They just go home, they sit on the couch, they turn on the TV, or they go to the theater, and for that 90 minutes, or in Marvel's case, 375 minutes, whatever their running time is, they don't want to think about the outside world. But Endgame, very serious themes in there, parenthood and a piece of shit turning his life around. And there's a lot of heavy stuff in there, but that's not what the movie's about. And I think that there's a subtlety in there that has been lost over the past 20 years because it's cool to be woke. And I think a lot of people want to do the not gaslighting, the virtue signaling. Mm-hmm. And it sells, it makes money. And I said this when Ghostbusters first came out, and I was saying women realize they're not doing this because they believe in these social issues. They're doing this because they want to reach into your pocket, open your wallet, and extract cash from your wallet. That's all it is.
Yeah, I remember when that movie came out, and I have watched it. It's not terrible, but it's, again, not... it's not good. It's not very good. It's not terrible, but it's just not very good. And I remember around the time that movie was coming out, I think it was like Melissa McCarthy who said, if you have a problem with this movie, that means you hate women. Or you have a problem with seeing women, in a movie. And it's just like, no, I have a problem with the fact that the movie doesn't look very good. Like, that's really my only problem, is that that's always going to be my only, my main problem with anything, is that it's not good. It has nothing to do with the fact that the lead is a woman or a man or gay or trans or whatever. It's going to have to do with the fact that the movie is not very good. And also, going with the thing that we're both horror guys, isn't like every horror movie in history, the heroine ends up being a woman?
Most modern horror films, yeah.
Well, I'm talking about the old school ones like Halloween.
I'm an old man. I'm an old man, so to me, modern is 1970s through the 1990s. Yeah,
like Alien. You had Sigourney Weaver, who's like the pinnacle of as far as badass women in horror movies. I mean, it's just. I mean, women.
That was always a laughable thing when critics would talk about how they're anti-woman and anti-women's rights. It's like, are you watching the same movie we are?
Yeah, it seems like a lot of critics are very anti-women because there's an interview I think you should look up. It's with when Tom Hardy was promoting Mad Max, and I guess I saw this last half of Mad Max, and from what I heard from a lot of people, and my girlfriend, she was saying it kind of had a very feminist tone to it, but it was done in a more less preachy way. And someone had asked Tom Hardy, I think they were trying to make a joke about it or be serious. They're saying, was there a point where you ever looked at the script and went, why are there so many women in this movie? And Tom Hardy just gave him this look like, you're a fucking idiot. And said, no.
Yeah, because if it's good, it's good. And I think, again, I love when I get a chance to talk to someone who likes multiple things like horror and wrestling, because a lot of the things we talk about, they kind of fold into each other. You mentioned earlier with AEW, and let's be honest, a lot of WWE as well. I'm not going to let them off the hook. There's a lot of guys out there who are more concerned with getting in their shit or looking cool or doing a spot as opposed to getting a certain reaction. Excuse me. So I think the same can be said for Hollywood. Is you can do social justice issues and bake them into your film, and they can be very, very successful. Halloween was very successful. It existed. It wasn't beating you over the head with it for the most part. But I think that's the problem. There are a lot of movies that they allow that to deter the film. So instead of making a film with that, talked about, they talk about that around a film. I don't know if I'm putting that right, but they're losing sight of the medium. And again, I don't make movies, so if you're someone who makes movies and you want to say fuck me, then fuck me. That's fine. But just in my opinion, from what I've seen and been watching movies my whole life, there's a way to do it, and I think people they're too focused on, I'm going to show how woke I am, or I'm going to include women, or I'm going to give this opportunity, as opposed to just making something good. And I don't think, if it's really, really good, I don't think people would have as much problem with it.
Let me kind of ask you something. I mean, this is kind of like staying within the barriers of the topic. What's your opinion on Brie Larson?
I don't see the fuss. I don't think she's terrible, but I don't see the fuss.
I mean, I know a lot of people have a problem with her. I personally don't have a problem with her. I can maybe see why. And here's how I'll explain it. And this kind of sounds weird because I think me and Brie Larson are the same age. I believe we were born in the same year. We're both millennials, except she's a little bit more too millennial. And here's how I'll explain it. She has that millennial way of thinking, which is, I want to save the world. I want to do everything right. I want to fix the world. I want to do A, B, C, and D. I know, Pence. I'm not going to say anything bad about her, Pence. I'm saying nice things. I know a lot of people's views about her is that she's too much. She fits that social agenda where she likes to talk about social issues and she's a feminist. A, B, C, and D. Again, I don't hate her. I don't have a problem with her. I think she's a very good actress. I mean, she's easy on the eyes. Captain Marvel wasn't amazing. I know a lot of people are subjected to say that Captain Marvel was the greatest piece of cinema they ever watched. I mean, it wasn't terrible. I mean, that movie was getting a lot of flack because of Brie Larson. Because, she made a comment where, she was talking about the movie, what was it? What was that movie called? I think it was called like Ascension Time, or it was a Disney movie where she had said,
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I think it was like she said something. I'm more interested in hearing about the review of this movie from someone who's not a 40-year-old white dude. Like, I don't need a 40-year-old white dude to tell me why this movie didn't work for them. And again, I can understand what she was trying to say. I can totally get what she was trying to say. But again, it's that millennial way of thinking. I'm a Brie Larson. I guess in other ways, I'm a Brie Larson apologist. Like, I can understand her.
Oh, I get it. Yeah, A Wrinkle in Time. Thanks, Pints.
There you go.
But I think, again, I think if it wasn't a quote-unquote movement, or if it wasn't like a marketing push right now that people are kind of getting tired of, I don't think it would have been as big a problem. I also think maybe it's millennial, maybe it's just a lack of awareness, but it's very abrasive to a certain group of people. So when certain people hear that, they don't understand what she's saying. They don't understand that she could say, I want to give an opportunity to minorities, to women, whatever. So you get first, what's the word? You get priority in my press line. Because I think she said that too. When she wanted press asking her questions about her movies, she wanted to see more women and more black people represented in the press. She could have said that as opposed to saying, I don't want to hear from 40-year-old white men. So I think some of it has to do with tact and how she approaches it. But I think people are just getting really, really worn out on this whole thing. I think they're just. I honestly think people are just sick of it.
I mean, I think she's kind of calmed down on a lot of it, especially when she did Endgame. It seems like she's kind of like. I don't want her to calm down on these issues, but it seems like she's like maybe not trying to do it as much. Because there's some video online where this guy was saying, her castmates hate her. Look at these interviews she's doing. I'm like, yeah, that's just somebody who has a lot of time on their hands, honestly. Making these videos.
I can see why. I can see why, though, because if I'm in a movie and it looks like it's going to be, oh yeah, Pines, I'm with you. I'd sell out Brie for Elizabeth Olsen any day, and that's a point I was going to make about Endgame.
Absolutely.
There was to your point about social justice too. Not to get too far off. There was a point in Endgame where, Brie Larson, Scarlet Witch, I don't know a ton about the Marvel Universe because, to be honest with you, I haven't read very many comics. I like them. I grew up on like the Marvel animated shows, but I'd never read into the comics. But I've had people tell me, hey, Scarlet Witch is badass. It made sense in the movie, in the narrative of Endgame, with, what's his name? Thanos killing, who was the android that had the orange stone? Her boyfriend.
Vision.
So he kills Vision to take the stone. It would have made sense for her to deal a fatal blow or to turn the tide. And that's a prime example of that having nothing to do with it being a guy or a woman. It just makes perfect sense in that. Well, I know, but then immediately Brie Larson swung in and here comes Miss Marvel. So it did happen, Plants. I get you. It did happen.
Yeah,
they forced Captain Marvel in there around that same time. And to me, it's like that's the difference of two creative choices. You can either let Scarlet Witch have that moment, or you can try to shoehorn Brie Larson in there because you want to sell Captain Marvel.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense because I think Scarlet Witch is a little bit more. And again, I read comics, but I don't read too many comics. I probably should have written a little bit more comics, but Scarlet Witch is a little bit more, known to the comic book fans than Captain Marvel is. She's been around a lot longer. She's kind of like an OG Avenger. And it made sense for her to have that moment because it was a lot more believable. Because, again, going back to what we said about WWE not being able to book a human, this was a human moment for Scarlet, or for Scarlet Witch, which was, you took away the only thing that I ever loved that meant anything to me. And I love that scene where she just comes in, she's like, you took everything from me. And then Thanos goes, I don't even know who you are. Like, that was just, he was Thanos from 2014. That was like a cunt thing to say. Like, I don't even know who you are. And then she almost freaking tears him in half. Like, she almost kills him. She almost tears him in half. And then he had to cheat.
And at that point, if she had done that, I think a lot of people would have been down. A lot of people would have been down for that, even though she was a woman. And I don't think it would have mattered. So to that point, like I said, there's certain creative choices that make sense as opposed to creative choices that are shoehorned. And that Thanos thing reminded me of Ronan. What was it? When Drax confronts Ronan in Guardians of the Galaxy, he's like, I have no idea who you are. And it's such a cunty, dismissive thing to say.
I guess when you're... Yeah, I guess I'm trying to, like, sympathize with the villains. It's like, you kill so many people, you're not going to, like, keep a logbook of how many people you kill. And then, like, eventually he remembers who he is. He's like, oh, yeah, I remember your family. I remember their screams or whatever. But...
Is it too soon to, like, do spoilers for Star Wars? Because I was going to mention that.
Go ahead. The movie's already been out for, 3 weeks. Go ahead.
So, sorry, but spoilers, everybody. Again, talking about, just choosing things creatively that make sense versus things that are shoehorned or things that don't work. In the scene where Kylo is battling for control versus Rey, and he shoots the bolt of lightning out and destroys the ship Chewie is on, that is a prime example of making a creative choice. One that can either have a lot of gravity or one that can't. If they would have left Chewie dead, logistically it would have been a problem because Chewie being alive would have that caused them to find other things, and she found her way onto Kylo's ship or whatever happened. But had they left Chewie dead, it brought so much more gravity and weight and real, like in a movie where you've seen a ton of people die, where she's like struggling internally with herself, that shows a real concrete result of her struggle affecting other people. In that scene, as far as we knew, she killed Chewie because she couldn't get her shit together, and because she couldn't control her power, and because she didn't have a handle on it. And then, of course, 5 minutes later, oh, it's okay, it's Disney, he's alive. And it just kind of took the air out of that moment. So again, like in Avengers, like in Infinity War, Endgame, I think there are certain times when people forsake creative choices and go with ulterior motives, whether that's personal or whether that's social causes.
So let me ask you something. Comparing to the Marvel franchise and Star Wars, why do you think Star Wars has become kind of like the lightning bolt of hate from a lot of fans, as opposed to Marvel, where it seems like Marvel is not trying to put out these I mean, they kind of do. They kind of like to put in those messages, but it seems very subtle. Whereas Star Wars, they just shoehorn in those messages. Like, why do you think Marvel has been able to be more successful about it?
I think they've been more subtle, and I think Star Wars, the issue has a lot to do with the fact that us as kids or as fans of the franchise, we had a lot of time to sit and think. And for years, we envisioned what a badass Jedi Master Luke Skywalker would look like. And to be honest with you, I think there was a lot of misdirected rage when it came to Star Wars. I think a lot of it was pointed at social justice. I think a lot of it was pointed at Rian Johnson. I mean, there are some things that, you can obviously blame him for and dislike. But I think a lot of it was displaced. And I think a lot of it comes from the fact that people wanted one last adventure. I think that's what it was. They waited 30 years. They finally got Luke Skywalker. Well, no, he's at the end of the movie and he doesn't say anything. Okay. Well, we got Han. Yeah, and he dies in a very poignant point of the movie. So after 30 years, we're playing video games. We're reading expanded universe novels. We're envisioning in our heads. And to be honest with you, kids like me and probably you, we're playing with the toys, like having our own adventures. I think fans didn't have that real feel-good moment of the originals reuniting and having one last adventure. Instead, they completely, to me, I think, ripped the heart out of the series in Episode 8 by going in a completely different direction with Luke. And I'm not saying that was I don't think it was a bad technical choice because it makes sense in the narrative of the film. But I think they ripped the heart and soul out of the series, and I think they didn't give the fans that one moment that I think they should have. And I think a lot of that hatred was misdirected at a lot of other things, to be honest with you.
Yeah, because I was watching The Mandalorian with my girl. The Mandalorian looks like what Star Wars should be, which is like an old school, spaghetti western samurai type of show. Samurai movies from the 70s. And I think the one deciding factor on how good that show is Jon Favreau. Jon Favreau has written classics. He made probably the most successful Christmas movie of all time, which was Elf, which is how he got hired to do Iron Man, which that kickstarted the Marvel Universe, and now he's doing The Mandalorian, and he made something that will be maybe the biggest toy that anyone would want to buy, and that's, Baby Yoda. Jon Favreau's just a genius in how he writes. He's a good writer, good director. And
sorry, go ahead.
I'm going to pose this question to you. Do you think Star Wars is going to work better as more like in small doses? And what I mean by that is on the Disney Plus shows, do you think it's going to work better as far as like a TV show, talking about different characters, different points in life rather than movies?
I think there's a lot more obviously you can do with a longer form narrative as opposed to trying to cram something in a 90-minute or 120-minute film or 3 films. And I think, honestly, it comes down to some people get too wrapped up in narrative structure. Like, there's no reason we couldn't have had a fourth film in this Star Wars franchise, in this new sequel franchise. There's no reason. There was so much people were talking about the pacing of the Rise of Skywalker. To me, my point of view, I may be wrong. To me, it was due to trying to cram in and retcon essentially a movie and a half to try to redo some of the stuff from Part 8 and get Part 9 accomplished. There's no reason they couldn't have extended it out to a fourth movie. Your original question, I'm sorry, would it be better in long form? I think it could be. I think there's too much expectation, and I think to try to world build with the new sequel trilogy, if they do one, I don't know. It's almost like reading a book versus seeing the book on film. Like seeing that, like everyone says, oh, the book's so much better. That's because you have time to let it breathe. You can let your imagination go. You could take your time. But I don't know. I think if it's working, stick with it. I think they can still make a shitload of money doing the movies because there's a lot more people that are going to go to the theater. And I think you're spreading out the revenue if you're just buying a Disney Plus membership. So I mean, what do I think? The budget is obviously a lot smaller for this series than for the films, and it shows. Not always in a bad way, but I don't know, man. I think I would rather see them focus on series like this for a while. Don't rush a movie series. It has to be a movie series. Do an Obi-Wan series. Everyone seems to want that.
Yeah, they're doing an Obi-Wan. They're doing that character from Rogue One. I forget the character, but let me just kind of talk about the movie for a bit. I'll get this out of the way. I'm what you call, I guess, a partial Star Wars fan. I'm not the biggest Star Wars fan in the world. My girl is. She's the Star Wars maniac. She knows about the movies. I don't think she's ever really read the comics or played the video games. One of my closest friends, her husband, read the comics, so he's more in tune with that. I enjoyed Rise of Skywalker. I didn't think it was a terrible movie. There were some things I had problems with that, like, you don't even have to be a Star Wars fan to like point this out. It's just as far as like movies and storytelling goes. Why did Ben and Rey kiss at the end? To me, that was probably the most awkward thing I've ever seen in any movie. Like, that was extremely awkward. Because I'm just like, wait, wasn't this motherfucker trying to kill her in the first movie?
According to J.K. Abrams. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, like, and he just tried to kill her earlier. So, he just went from being murderous Kylo Ren to, hey, I'm Ben. I'm wearing long sleeve shirts from the Gap. I'm a good boy.
Oh, it's funny. That's something I've always thought about Darth Vader, too. Everyone was always like, oh, Darth Vader had a white suit and been a good guy and not died at the end of Return of the Jedi. Like, dude, after murdering children and being like the baddest dude in the universe, how awkward would that family vacation car ride be?
It's like, so, you guys seen any good movies lately? It's I don't know, it's just awkward. And then the scene at the end where... And I just thought, I don't know if you caught this the way I did, but at the end where Lando comes in with all the ships, where Poe thinks that he's good, that he's dead, and then you just hear Lando saying, don't worry about it, Poe, I'm here. Yeah, that was my Lando impression. Anytime he came on screen, I just kept saying, works every time. That's my Billy D. Williams impression, everybody.
45?
Works every time, people. But when he came on screen with all those ships, I was like, was Disney honestly trying to copy from another one of their movies? Because it looks like they were trying to copy from the Endgame scene where all the portals open. It didn't really connect with me that much because, and let me compare both scenes. The Endgame scene I thought was more emotionally inducing because with Cap, Cap was willing to stand up to Thanos and fight them all off, even though and again, I don't know if anyone notices, but his arm was fucked up. Whenever he was like tightening up his shield, his arm was like really fucked up. So he was willing to fight Thanos, and all of a sudden he hears that voice, coming through his intercom going, Cap, are you there? Cap, and I'm sorry, I get really choked up when I talk about this. I don't care how old I'll get. I'll watch that scene and I'm always going to cry.
Dude, I cry whenever I see Carrie Fisher and I hear that fucking Princess Leia music they play.
That was my girl was crying after the movie. It was a pretty emotional movie. I'll get to that in a bit. But when Sam says on your left, anytime he says on your left, I'm like like I just want to grab my chest and be like fan service. And like it made. When you stop recording, let me know. GRs, I can come in. Yeah, sure. And and every motherfucker comes to that portal. Now for Star Wars, I don't think it worked because what connection does Poe have to Lando, other than that he saw him for like 2 minutes earlier in the movie? Like,
I completely did not put that together until you just brought that up.
Like, I'm not trying to say people shouldn't like that scene. It's just like, again, I'm a movie buff. I nitpick a lot. So it's like for Cap, that meant a lot to him because that's his best friend that he hasn't seen in 5 years because he's been, snapped away. So it was emotional for him. For Poe, yeah, he's happy that he has backup, but he has no emotional connection to Lando. If it was someone like say Princess Leia in that scene or Luke, and he heard that voice, it would mean a lot to him because he knows who Lando is. So I don't know. I guess that's me just being nitpicky.
No. I completely get it. Sorry, I'm trying to copy a link here and pop it in the chat. I don't want my computer to start talking. Here we go. I got it. No, I think a lot of it boils down to, as you mentioned, there was really no reason for you to buy into those characters emotionally. And I didn't even pick up on them copying that in a way. You just said it, but it does kind of feel like that. But even with Rey, there was no depth to her. She was a flat character. That character you should have been able to emotionally connect with. Like Captain America, like Tony Stark. And I think that had a lot to do with the failure of Star Wars this time around too. Because and maybe Marvel benefited from having these individual movies and then folding them all together into like this big Super Bowl in a way, for lack of a better term. Whereas Star Wars set out to, all right, we're reinventing the series, we're reinvigorating it, we're doing a trilogy, that's just the way it was. Marvel was like, all right, let's do an Iron Man movie. And it was big, and no one really expected it to be huge. Okay, so then they had another Iron Man movie, and then they did another film, and then they had Captain America, then they had Winter Soldier. And then along the way, they came up with the Avengers, not came up with, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was a more gradual thing as opposed to, all right, we're just going to shoehorn all this in here. And to be honest, I dropped a video in the chat. It's Star Wars Theory is one of the most popular YouTube video series on, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that here. One of the most popular channels for Star Wars on YouTube. And he detailed some, the rumored leaks from the set. So who knows if they're true, taken with a grain of salt. But if you want answers as to why certain things happened, why they didn't, what JJ's cut may have looked like based on some rumored stuff, check it out. It's in the Drew Yari Show chat. But I'm sure Disney meddled, and I think that has a lot to do with it. So if it worked for Endgame, maybe they thought, hey, let's put this in here. Because according to these leaks, and again, they may not be right, JJ's cut was much different than the film we saw. I don't know, man. It's hard to say because we're not going to know the true story or the whole story. And if we do find out, it's not going to be for a long time. I just think there's way too much with these movies. And I was reading, there's a really cool book. It's called Taking Shape. It's about the Halloween series. The studio messing with Rob Zombie's Halloween. Mm-hmm. And just the mountain of shit he had to put up with and people trying to insert scenes that I want to see this. Well, if Disney comes to you and they own Lucasfilm, they have employed you, and they want to see something in their movie that they're shelling out, $40, $60 million to make, you're going to have to acquiesce or they can find themselves a new director. So I'm sure a lot of that had to do with Disney meddling and to realize, as you pointed out, how the ending of the film was almost exactly like Endgame without the emotional connotation. Yeah, I don't know. Then that might have been a Disney call.
And also, going back to Rise of Skywalker, the one scene I did like, and I always get a kick. I always like these scenes. Anytime there's a scene with a parent and their child interacting, and that always gets to me. When they brought back a Han, I was shocked. Like, I was like, Disney had to fucking literally had to shell out a lot of money just to bring Han Solo back for 5 minutes. But I liked it. It was a good scene. As soon as I heard "Hey Kid," I'm like, that can't be Han, can it? Like, that has to be maybe Luke or something. No, it's Han. And it was a good scene.
Death Star. Sorry, I had to.
It was a good scene. It made sense. Like, as far as scenes we're talking about where it just seems like they're shoehorned in, this was a nice scene. It made sense. It was and I got a little choked up when I saw it. It was a nice scene, and it helped, Kylo kind of let that character die and go back to being Ben. So it made sense. It was a nice way to bring back that character without having to shoehorn him in. But
people even expected Harrison Ford to come back for the movie either. Some people expected maybe, but it was not on my radar whatsoever.
Let me see something about Harrison Ford. Do you honestly think he hates being in Star Wars, or do you think that's an act?
You're kind of breaking up. I don't know if it's me or you.
I was asking about Harrison Ford. Do you think the whole act that oh shit I can notice it too? All right, how do I sound?
Better now.
Okay, yeah, I can see it. And if I'm fucking up, please let me know. If my connection's fucking up, please let me know. But I was asking about Harrison Ford. Do you think this act that he likes to portray about him hating Star Wars, do you think that's just an act, or do you think that's how he really feels?
I don't think he hates it, but I think it goes back to your buddy. And again, I love when threads within a 2-hour conversation, we're talking about Star Wars, horror, and wrestling. The same threads kind of weave in and out because we're talking about fandoms. I think there's people like him. He was a working actor. He was an actor. He was focused on making movies. Much like Jamie Lee Curtis didn't want to get stuck and pigeonholed, which she was for a while doing horror movies in the 80s. She wanted to break out and be an actor and do different things. I think the same thing for him. I think this was, one of his early works, and it made him super famous, but he will always be tied to it. And I think he understands the magnitude of it with fans, but at the same time, I don't think he's a fan of the genre. So to him, he's just like, Jesus Christ, guys. It's like there's an interview where some guy asked Scott Steiner if he ever bought any of his action figures. And Steiner's like, why the fuck would I buy an action figure? I'm a grown man. Give it up,
I can just picture Scott Steiner just. You know what? I think if I were someone like a Scott Steiner or Han Solo, I would not want to buy my own merchandise. It's almost like when Scott Hall was talking about how he went to Bret Hart's house, and Bret Hart literally had pictures of himself everywhere in the house. There was literally a giant frame photo in his living room of Bret, and it's just yeah, I don't even like listening to my own voice. I would not want to see a giant photo of myself in my living room. Oh man, that's funny. That was a good line. But yeah, Harrison Ford. Mark Hamill, said that he knows in his heart that he doesn't think Harrison Ford hates it. It's just he likes to put on the grumpy old curmudgeon, gimmick. And at the end of the day, this is the role that made Harrison famous. And I think deep down in his heart, he's always going to have a fondness for it. But it's and I'm just I don't know how Harrison Ford thinks, obviously, but I'm just gonna assume I know how he thinks. He's well, everyone thinks I'm a grumpy piece of shit, so I might as well act like it. Might as well give them what they want.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, moving on to I guess another topic. Pro Wrestling Illustrated put out their they voted Adam Cole as the wrestler of 2019. Your thoughts I'm dying to hear your thoughts, Brian.
I think he's great. Yeah. Again, Plains brought up Carrie Fisher's daughter is hot, but she looks old. Did you see her as Montana in AHS 84? If not, go check it out. Yeah, I don't know. Adam Cole, I really like Adam Cole. He just looks like a really tiny dude. He does not look, and he may, kick my ass. I don't know. He's in shape, whatever. He just does not look threatening. To me, when I see a guy like him, to me, Darby Allin is small like that, but he looks threatening because he's got an edge to him. And he looks a little nuts. Adam Cole he's so tiny. I don't know, man. I love him. He's a great wrestler. And if he was voted Wrestler of the Year because of his performances alone, sure, fine. That's an argument. But I don't know, man. I've just always been mixed on Adam Cole.
Yeah, I like Adam Cole, too. Personally, I would have voted Daniel Bryan as Wrestler of the Year, but that's just my opinion. With Adam Cole, it just seems like people like him, but they don't buy into him. And the thing that I hear, and I think I heard this from the Soup guys, is that Adam Cole is what is like the wet dream of every internet mark.
Yeah.
And I guess that kind of makes sense. But yeah,
I wonder if that has anything to do with in some form or fashion, and maybe this, it's a theory I've got. I don't know if it holds any water. This may be one of the other things I've thrown out tonight that misses. So let me know what you think.
Good.
I think with guys like Kevin Owens and with guys like Adam Cole, I think the hardcore fans are super focused. Not the hardcore fans. I think there's a pocket of hardcore fans that are super focused on guys like the Bucks, guys like Kevin Owens, Adam Cole. A lot of these people who aren't overly flashy. There's some that have charisma, but there's guys that have I remember people going nuts for Chad Collier in Ring of Honor, and it was holy shit, he can wrestle, but he's got zero personality. I think part of it has to do with if you work hard enough, and if you really try and dedicate yourself to your craft, you could be that good technically. If you're good enough athlete, you could do the moves. But as hard as you work, if you don't got it, you'll never be that charismatic. And I think with the guys that focus on the technical stuff and that aren't charismatic, I think there's something attainable for a lot of fans who may not have social skills. If that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Kevin Owens, they say, people like him because they could be him because he's got a belly and he doesn't look like your average wrestler. I think there's a lot of people who they focus on the technical skill because you can master that, but you can't be an over-the-top personality if you don't have one. And a lot of those people don't have one.
Yeah, with Kevin Owens, Kevin Owens is one of those few guys in the company that when he talks, it sounds genuine. When you hear him talk, you just go, oh, that's a human. That's not a character, it's a human. So anything Kevin Owens says, it would make sense. But with Adam Cole, again, I love Adam Cole, but I don't know. I would have chosen him as Wrestler of the Year. Who would you have chosen as Wrestler of the Year?
Oh, Wrestler of the Year? Man, I hate those lists. I really do, because wrestling was so... wrestling is so subjective. I don't know. Some people would probably say Kofi, but I don't think that he resonated after he won the title. You could say Daniel Bryan, for sure. He's in the running.
I think Daniel Bryan's had a more consistent year because at the beginning of the year he was the champion, and then he had the best match at WrestleMania, and it's Daniel Bryan's one of those guys that it doesn't matter what you do with him, you can make him hot, you can cool him off, and then you can make him hot again. No matter what position he is in, as far as his character goes, he's always going to be over. Even when he lost the title and he was in that tag team with Rowan, he was still over. So, and now he's back in the main event picture again. I just chose Daniel Bryan as my Wrestler of the Year because he's been very consistent all year. He hasn't missed a beat. He hasn't messed up. They didn't try to put him in any goofy shit. And again, he's over. He gets a reaction. Kofi had, I guess, the better storyline, and he had the best match of the year. The best match at WrestleMania. But then after he became champion, it was just like, what are we going to do with this guy?
No, I completely understand. See, the reason it's hard for me to gauge this is you can judge it by so many different criteria, and they don't always hold the same water. Like Pints is saying Will Ospreay. I would say Will Ospreay too, because technically he's fantastic. Mm-hmm. But when you compare a guy like him to a guy like Daniel Bryan, who's consistently performing at that level night after night in front of the size of the crowds that they do, I mean, I can't compare that because, there's been a million guys on the indies that, they have great matches. They're wrestler of the year. They do this great stuff. And they do, but then they go to the big time and either the schedule's too much, they can't navigate the politics, or they don't connect in the ring. So it's really hard for me to judge anybody, even though Will Ospreay is technically one of the best wrestlers in the world. I don't know if I can name, you know what I mean? I can't compare that. I can't compare him to Daniel Bryan. I would still pick Daniel Bryan over him, and it'd be hard for me to find someone to put in Daniel Bryan's place, to be fair.
Yeah, you're right. Will Ospreay, I can't really choose Will Ospreay, maybe because I don't think I really watch his matches. I don't really watch NJPW that much, mainly because I don't have Access TV. And it's not fair for me to say somebody is wrestler of the year or they've had a good match when I never really watched them. But
yeah, no, I agree with that too. I think there's a lot of people who put weight into the opinion of certain quote unquote experts and haven't really seen enough of their work. That's true. I feel the same way. Let me ask you a question if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
You let me know if you like it, if you dislike it. Same thing goes for the chat. Daniel Bryan and Brock Lesnar go number 1 and number 2 in the Royal Rumble.
Ooh.
Daniel Bryan and Brock Lesnar are both in it at the end.
Well, Daniel Bryan's wrestling The Fiend at Royal Rumble, right?
Oh, shit.
Yeah, he's wrestling The Fiend for the title.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, that would be an interesting idea. I mean, you can have Brock and Daniel be the first 2 guys in, and then Daniel can be like in the final 4. I mean, that wouldn't be a bad idea. I mean, that's the idea you can give to Daniel Bryan. You call him the Iron Man Daniel Bryan. But I mean, that'd be a good idea if Daniel wasn't already wrestling at the event. So
yeah, I forgot about that because, like I said, I haven't really been watching other than highlights, Raw and SmackDown lately. But I was thinking of, okay, if you take Bryan and if you take Brock, I think the crowd would shit on it. But if you did it right, you could, like, Brock could go over at the Rumble, eliminating Bryan, but Bryan has lasted an hour in the same match with Lesnar. He came close to beating him at Survivor Series or whatever it was a year or 2 ago. Like, I think you could tell that story and you could set up Bryan as a challenger to Brock if you wanted to go that way and if you didn't want to bring someone else into the fold. But I don't know. I just was sitting thinking about that the other night when I was watching one of the shows.
Oh, well. I was just thinking about, because the idea for Mania is that they want Roman versus The Fiend, which it makes sense because, the Fiend's supposed to be the monster and Roman, I'll give WWE this. They have pushed Roman the right way. They haven't tried to overly push him. I mean, granted, he has a disease that can literally kill him in a minute, but that's another smart thing too, is they haven't tried to use that as a way to push him. Like, they don't have Roman constantly cut problems about, I have leukemia. Did you know I have leukemia? So it makes sense. Like, and here's the best way I've described how they push Roman. They push Roman like a guy. They don't try to push him as a badass, which they kind of have, but they don't try to push him as a character. They just push him as a guy, a relatable guy. And it makes sense.
I'm sorry, which is the exact opposite of what they tried to do the first time, which is why it's kind of working now.
Like, they try to push him as a Samoan John Cena, and that went over horrendously. And now I think they realized, especially when he came back, with his condition, They realized, okay, so if we try to push him like we did before, it's going to look even more bad.
Yeah, I don't know. I know they want him as the guy, and I know Fox is high on him. I really don't see how they're going to be able to push him as the top guy, and fans aren't going to reject it, because I still don't think they're going to accept him. I don't know. I don't have that faith,
I think they have. I mean, I was talking to Julian about this from the Wrestling Court, where he said that there was a SmackDown taping they're at where the fans were actually cheering him, like they're actually giving him a legit pop, and WWE still tried to fuck with the audio because they didn't think that they were actually cheering him. And I can just picture Vince in the back going, crank out the cheers. But Vince, they're actually cheering him. Crank it up, damn it! Again, I like how they're pushing Roman. I'm glad Roman is back. I'm glad he's having probably one of the better. He's having one of his best wrestling matches. Like, he's having some of his best wrestling out there. It looks good. It doesn't feel forced. Like, for example, when his match with Buddy Murphy, he was able to make Buddy Murphy look like a fucking star. Or, the match at Survivor Series with Keith Lee, he made Keith look like a fucking star.
You just hope they don't go to the Rumble and have him eliminate Lee now.
I
he got to get his heat back, God damn it.
Again, I hope that doesn't happen either. I hope, and this is just my booking, you just have, Keith and Roman be the last two out and have Keith get his heat by eliminating Roman. But, again, I can only dream.
Yeah, no kidding. I think that'd be great. I do.
All right, so, we're done like 2 hours. It's crazy. Was there anything in particular you want to bring up?
Oh, not really. I think if we try to shoehorn anything else, then it might be inorganic. Because I know you had the picture in the chat earlier about like what CM Punk said to the Miz, and I was curious to see what you thought about that. Since you put it in the chat,
I thought it was hilarious. Like the first time I saw it, because I follow a lot of wrestling pages on Facebook, and they'll post stuff that ends up being like Photoshop and fake. So when I saw that, I'm thinking that can't be real, and I went on CM Punk's Twitter. I'm like, holy shit, he did say that. So, and I was listening to Wrestling Court earlier, and Rob on there made it very clear. Any thoughts about us having CM Punk, returning to the company are out the window. If he's going to say something like that he's really not going to return. And I kind of agree. Because if you're going to trash somebody who's currently in the company, especially somebody like the Miz, who's very well known, he's very popular, there's no way in hell you're coming back. And
yeah, but then Triple H just did an interview. I don't know when it was, but I saw the recap today where they asked him about CM Punk coming back, and he said if it was right for Punk and right for us and everyone's on the same page, we'd love to have him back. So I don't know if that was after this or what, but man, that was like. It's funny because I mentioned the cult of wrestling and how like people play ball and they play footsie and like even Ric Flair. I love Ric Flair, but like when he's friends with someone, oh, they're a great worker, they're amazing, they're tremendous. When he's not friends with them, even if they're good, oh, they're the shits. They were nobody. Like, come on, the business is so political. To see someone like Punk just like go for the throat like that, it was kind of cool. Except, I don't know, Punk is. I don't know. He kind of showed himself to be a bit of a douchebag over the past few years. So I don't know. I don't know how to feel about it. Like I get it, but I don't know if the Miz was the guy to say that to. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because when they had Baron Corbin on the show, I was surprised on how nice Punk was being to Corbin. Like, I was very surprised. I mean, granted, I don't think Baron was around when Punk was there, so I don't think he had really much interaction with them. And
to be fair, Miz did take a shot at Punk and what he said. So that, yeah, I kind of get.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people in the company, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people in the company, not just Vince or Triple H or the Miz, have some sort of resentment towards Punk. I wouldn't see someone like Kofi Kingston having a problem with him because I know Kofi and Punk are boys, and I think the New Day guys in general love Punk. They've all said nice things about CM Punk. With someone like The Miz, I can understand why, because in the CM Punk documentary that came out, the Best in the World one, if you watch that, the whole time the Miz is one of the guys talking about Punk. Miz is putting over Punk. He's saying nice things about CM Punk. And while that's happening, CM Punk comes out saying, yeah, the Miz sucks, fuck him. Like, he's talking about, the Miz was the main event of WrestleMania. I should have been there. He didn't belong there. And all the while, Miz is going, Punk was a star. He's a great wrestler. Like, it's just, I remember.
That's why when I see Punk say stuff like that, I wonder if he's not just being a cunt about it because, he main event in WrestleMania and I never did. Like, I get that Miz was poking fun at what Punk said, but let's be honest. I changed the culture. That was really corny. So that kind of, if someone's poking fun at that, I'm good with that. I don't know. I don't have too much sympathy for Punk the way that he handled his exit with WWE. Not saying they didn't push him. Not saying that maybe he wasn't pushed to the brink or had few choices or, it was very personal. But I don't know. I think there was a lot of collateral damage with that and maybe unnecessary.
Yes. I mean, it was CM Punk. I guess we all kind of have a love and hate thing with him because, we love him for all the good things he's done. But, post WWE, post wrestling, it just seems like he's always kind of had that kind of snotty attitude about wrestling until he decided to come back and do like the Starrcade and come to backstage. I don't know. Like this guy, he doesn't seem to get that if it wasn't for wrestling, he wouldn't have the success he's having post the business. He wouldn't have been able to go into UFC. He wouldn't have been able to work with Marvel or to be in movies or TV shows or whatever. So I get it's just CM Punk just seems like he comes across as somebody who's the smartest dumb person I know.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
Yeah, like he gets it, but he doesn't. Like he comes across as someone who's very street smart, but can be very dumb at not reading the room.
You think that's mental illness, maybe?
It might be. I don't know because not much.
I don't mean he's crazy off his rocker or like psychotic. I just mean defense mechanisms.
Well, also CM Punk's childhood wasn't exactly perfect. I mean, and I don't mean use it as like a excuse, but he did not have the best childhood growing up. He didn't have a good relationship with his family or his parents. I mean, his brother apparently stole from him. Like his brother stole all the money he made at that federation that him and I think Colt Cabana made, and then his I don't know a lot of people know about this, but he had to take out a restraining order against his mom. Like
I heard that too.
Yeah, like he's dealt with a lot of emotional baggage, and again, understandable. I can understand how people can be the way they are, especially someone like Punk who, I guess the way I'll describe it is, I'm gonna get at you before you get at me. Like before you have a chance to do something to me, I'm gonna do something to you. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I see that, but I also see too. It's kind of related to that. Like, I think he feels like he's been hurt or betrayed by a lot of people in his life that should have had his back, and I can see the wrestling thing fitting into that because wrestling was like his family. It was his home. It was that stable thing in some ways that he may never have had. This is speculation and based off stuff he said. So if he finally found this world that he felt like he belonged in, and then he feels like he's forced out and that people are like not taking his back and being shitty about it, then I can kind of understand why he reacted the way he did, or just shut it off. And instead of recognizing, what, wrestling has afforded me this or that, to turn around and go, I made myself, it was me, to tell himself that. Maybe it's a defense mechanism. I don't know. But super talented guy, super charismatic. I think he did change some things, just that changed the culture comment was a little bit cringy.
At the end of the day, Punk is always going to be Punk. I mean, that's the only way we can really equate it. But
I'm having a hard time hearing you, boss.
I'm sorry. I was just saying, at the end of the day, Punk is always going to be Punk. There's really no way we can really like look at it or talk about it Maybe unfortunately, that's always going to be him. You know what I mean, he's that guy that I think you really have to know him to really like him and understand him. And if you don't really know too much about him, you would despise him and think he's a piece of shit. So
it's the cult of personality thing. You know, a lot of people who are super charismatic and who inspire that kind of devotion to them have a love-hate thing with the public. You either love them or you hate them. But it also, which is why, you know, John Cena was so polarizing. It's why Roman Reigns, although I don't think he's that charismatic, was polarizing, because those magnetic personalities like Punk, you know, he's he's funny, he's witty, he's talented, he's a great performer, but he's also kind of a dick. You know, and it's kind of funny. You see that with a lot of people who have that kind of following.
Because I know a mutual friend of ours, John Draper, you know, shout out to John Draper.
John, yeah.
You know, yeah, Draper pointed this out, that he knows a lot of people in the hardcore scene that he's personal friends with that are personal friends with Punk, and they love the guy. They are over the moon about the guy. They say nothing but nice things about him. And if you're somebody who's not in that scene, I guess if you're somebody who's not a part of that, you know, that punk music scene, that comic book scene, then you're going to think he's a complete douche. So I don't know. So I can't speak on somebody I don't know that well. But basically, you know, just doing the eye test, from what I've seen, he's a dick. And he points it out. He points out that he's not the most friendly guy in the world. So, but I think that about covers everything that we had.
I think so. And if not, I'm sure Soup will cover the rest tonight.
Oh, yeah, they're about to start in 18 minutes. Was there anything else you wanted to go over?
Oh, man, thank you very much for having me on, because, you know, I have been intending to do this and meaning to do this. This is my first guest spot on anyone's podcast. I appreciate the time. Now that I'm doing more with my stuff again, hopefully I can have you on and we can talk more. But no,
Absolutely.
Super cool, man. Super cool. I appreciate it. Thanks everybody in the chat for being cool and for hanging with us tonight. But I appreciate it. Yeah,
thanks, man. Again, anytime, any place, just let me know, man. I'm there.
It's good.
All right, plug your show in before you leave, man.
Okay, www.bshowpodcast.com, all one word. It'll take you to my Spreaker page. There are a couple of, I will pints, I'll get in touch. There are a couple of the horror reanimated shows where I was trying to kind of rework ideas or talk about films that were never made. It never got off the ground. So just stick with the B Show for now, because I'm going to be putting more shows up probably once a week, talking about the stuff that we talked about tonight. So if you dug this show, you'll dig my show. You can follow me on social media, on Twitter, on Facebook, and on Instagram at BShowBrian. I made it kind of easy for everybody. You can find, I have a YouTube channel, which you can find on Spreaker in the show. There's links there. But also Brian J's Horror History. And I hope now that my schedule is a little easier, I can put some more stuff up. So if you like horror movies and the history of stuff behind them, how they got made, or at least the drama behind the scenes, you can check out Brian J's Horror History on YouTube. And I also do have a YouTube page for Brian J's B Show. Just seek it out or get in touch with me. You can email me at bshowbrian@gmail.com if you have any questions.
All right, Brian. Again, pleasure having you on the show. Again, you're more than welcome to come back on the show, man. Love to have you back on. Just let me know.
Right on.
All right, take care, brother.
You too, man. Have a good night.
All right, that is how long did we go? 2 hours and 15 minutes. Long show. Good content. All right, so yeah, same show. Shame. Oh my God, I'm fucking my words. Same show, same place, same time next week. I will be back next week, same time. Again, shout outs, guys. First and foremost, gotta shout out Brian. He just mentioned it, but I'll mention it again. Look for his podcast. Look for the B Show. You can find it anywhere where podcasts are put out. I have it on Google Play. You can find it on Spreaker, and also anywhere else that podcasts are distributed, put out, what have you. And also his horror podcast, Horror Reanimated. Same place, Spreaker, wherever. And also his YouTube channel. It was good shit. I listened to I remember listening to the bit he was doing about Halloween. I forget which Halloween that was, but because I remember reading the article about it. I listened to Brian's about it, so that was entertaining. I liked it. Wrestling Soup. They're about to be on in 15 minutes, I think. So listen to those guys. I'm sure they don't need me to tell you listen to them, but listen, give them some love. Go to their Patreon, of course. The Don Tony Kevin Castle show. You can listen to them. You can listen to them every Monday after Raw, and go to their Patreon as well. Shout out to John Draper, very good friend of the show. He's a good friend of me and Brian's. Shout out to Trez. She's on the Dark Chronicles with Kevin Castle on their Patreon. Did you watch the video? I didn't, Vince. I'm sorry if I sound angry. I'm coughing. I have a cold. But no, I didn't get a chance to watch it today, Vince. But again, it's on my queue with the other million podcasts that I listen to. So, Texas Podcast Massacre. If you're a horror fan, if you watch horror movies from yesteryear and today, they cover everything. They even cover the bad horror movies, and that's entertaining as fuck. I'm actually going to be on there next week. That'll be my third appearance. Thursday. I mean, it's not going to affect this show. I'm literally going to be recording this show, and then I'm going to jump on that show. So, and that's not going to be live. That's going to be a pre-record. But look for the episode when it drops. We're gonna continue the Insidious franchise by covering Insidious Chapter 2. I was on there twice before we covered the first Insidious, and then Frailty, which, again, one of my personal favorites. What's another podcast? The Trademark Podcast with Tyler the Trademark, good friend of the show. Russell Court with Julian and Mark. They just had an episode that dropped yesterday. They're every Wednesday. I don't know if they're every Wednesday or every other Wednesday. I think they're every Wednesday. I'm gonna show them some love. Architect Podcast with good friend Derek and his friend Irvin. I'm not sure if they're doing. I'm not really too sure. I think their show's on hiatus at the moment. But give their show a shout out, or give their show some love. Fall Scout Radio with Angie Carlick, another good friend of the show. The Ruben Prime TV podcast. Ruben, good friend of the show, my brother. So pretty much show everybody some love. Listen to everybody's podcasts. That's the thing about podcasts. There's content for everybody. If you're into gardening, there's going to be a podcast about gardening. If you're into drugs, there's podcasts about drugs. So give everybody some love. Show everybody some love. Listen to their podcast. Again, I'll be back here next week. Also, social media, Twitter, Instagram, and I also have a Facebook page, The Drew Yari Show. So look that up. And again, I'll be back next week, guys. And I gotta edit this show. I gotta pick the lady up from work. So I know I told Pence that we could voice chat in a bit, but I really have to edit this show. It's gonna take a while. And I also gotta pick the lady up from work. So yeah. So sorry, Pence. But all right, thanks, mate. All right, guys, I will see you next week. And that's really about it. Later, guys.